Christianity first arrived in Britain during the Roman occupation, 43 to 410 AD, introduced by soldiers, traders, and missionaries. By the 4th century, Christianity had gained a modest but stable foothold. Though Britain's Christian community was relatively small and isolated, it played a role in early Christian councils, notably at Arles in 314 AD. However, the departure of Roman legions in the early 5th century left the British Christians vulnerable, and as the Anglo-Saxons began to invade, the fledgling church faced immense challenges. In the 6th century, missionary work began anew. St. Augustine of Canterbury arrived in 597 AD, sent by Pope Gregory the Great to reintroduce Christianity to the Anglo-Saxons. Establishing a monastery at Canterbury, Augustine would become the first Archbishop of Canterbury, laying the foundations of the Church in England. Over time, this mission spread Christianity across Anglo-Saxon England, and various forms of Christianity began to intertwine. By 664, England faced a significant decision at the Synod of Whitby, whether to follow Celtic Christianity or Roman practices. King Oswiu of Northumbria presided over this momentous gathering, ultimately deciding in favor of Roman customs, which shaped the direction of English Christianity for centuries. The Norman conquest of 1066 transformed England's religious and political landscape. William the Conqueror brought with him not only a new ruling elite, but also a stronger sense of allegiance to Rome. Under William's rule, the English Church saw a reorganization, with many Anglo-Saxon bishops replaced by Normans and construction of cathedrals and abbeys flourishing. Papal influence increased, though English monarchs kept a tight grip on ecclesiastical appointments, laying the groundwork for future tensions between church and state. Through the 12th and 13th centuries, the English Church remained in communion with Rome. Still, tensions over authority and wealth were bubbling beneath the surface. Criticisms of church corruption emerged, and figures like John Wycliffe in the 14th century began to question the need for a papal hierarchy. Wycliffe advocated for an English translation of the Bible and argued that Scripture, rather than the Pope, should be the basis of Christian faith. Though he was deemed a heretic, his ideas planted early seeds of reform. The English Reformation began in earnest with the reign of Henry VIII. Unlike Martin Luther's theological disputes with the Catholic Church, Henry's split was motivated by personal and political concerns. In the 1520s, Henry sought an annulment from his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, as she had not borne him a male heir. When Pope Clement VII refused the annulment, Henry took radical action. In 1534, Henry passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring himself the supreme head of the Church of England and formally breaking from the Pope's authority. This act gave rise to the Anglican Church, a uniquely English institution. Henry dissolved monasteries and seized their wealth, using it to consolidate royal power and reshape England's religious landscape. However, despite the split, Henry maintained much of Catholic doctrine within the Church of England, resisting more radical Protestant changes. Upon Henry's death in 1547, his young son Edward VI ascended the throne, and under the influence of Protestant advisors, significant doctrinal changes were introduced. Edward's reign saw the Church of England move closer to Reformed Protestantism. The Book of Common Prayer, created by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer in 1549, provided a standard liturgy in English, replacing Latin and reinforcing a distinct Anglican identity. Cranmer's work culminated in the 42 Articles, which laid down the theological principles of the Reformed Church of England, embracing doctrines like justification by faith and rejecting transubstantiation. Edward VI's early death in 1553 brought his Catholic half-sister, Mary I, to the throne. A devout Catholic, Mary sought to restore England's relationship with Rome, repealing Edward's Protestant reforms and reviving many Catholic practices. Her reign, however, was marked by persecution. Nearly 300 Protestant dissenters, including prominent reformers like Cranmer, were executed, earning her the title Bloody Mary. This bloody repression left a lasting scar, and when Mary died in 1558, England was eager for stability and compromise. Elizabeth I, ascending the throne in 1558, took a moderate approach to religion. Her reign marked the establishment of a distinct Anglican identity through the Elizabethan religious settlement, which aimed to find a middle ground between Catholicism and Protestantism. The Act of Supremacy, 1559, reinstated the monarch's authority over the Church of England, with Elizabeth taking the title of Supreme Governor. The Act of Uniformity, 1559, mandated the use of the Revised Book of Common Prayer, creating a standardized worship that incorporated elements from both Catholic and Protestant traditions. The 39 Articles, issued in 1571, further solidified Anglican doctrine, affirming Protestant beliefs while retaining traditional practices. Elizabeth's settlement brought a sense of religious unity, if uneasy, to England and allowed the Anglican Church to flourish as a via media, middle way, between Rome and Geneva. The early 17th century brought new challenges. Under James I and Charles I, tensions grew between Anglicans who favored traditional practices and Puritans who desired further reform. These divisions, combined with political struggles, led to the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651. Following Charles I's execution, England briefly became a republic under Oliver Cromwell, who suppressed the Anglican Church and promoted Puritan practices. However, the restoration of the monarchy in 1660 also restored the Anglican Church's privileged status. The Act of Uniformity, 1662, re-established the Book of Common Prayer, and the Test Act, 1673, barred non-Anglicans from public office, cementing Anglicanism's central place in English life. In 1688, the Glorious Revolution brought William and Mary to the throne, ushering in a period of greater religious tolerance. The Toleration Act of 1689 allowed freedom of worship for dissenting Protestant groups, though it excluded Catholics and non-Trinitarian Christians. Anglicanism remained the established church, but a new era of religious pluralism began to take root, reflecting changing attitudes and paving the way for the Enlightenment. The 18th century saw the rise of the Methodist movement, led by John and Charles Wesley, who sought to revitalize the Church of England through a focus on personal faith and social reform. While initially loyal to Anglicanism, Methodism's rapid growth eventually led to the formation of a separate denomination, signaling a shift in the religious landscape and highlighting Anglicanism's struggle to address the spiritual needs of England's expanding, industrializing population. The 19th century was a time of introspection and reform for the Anglican Church. The Oxford movement, led by figures like John Henry Newman and Edward Pusey, sought to revive traditional Catholic elements within Anglicanism, including the sacraments, liturgy, and apostolic succession. This movement, known as Anglo-Catholicism, emphasized the continuity of the Anglican Church with the ancient Christian tradition and sparked a renewed appreciation for ritual and theology. Meanwhile, evangelicals within the church focused on social reform, championing causes such as the abolition of slavery, education for the poor, and prison reform. The interplay between Anglo-Catholic and evangelical influences brought new vigor and diversity to Anglicanism, shaping its identity in the modern era. By the 20th century, the Anglican Church in England was part of a global Anglican communion consisting of independent churches across former British territories. The Lambeth Conferences, initiated in 1867, helped to unify Anglicanism worldwide, fostering a spirit of cooperation among diverse national churches. However, the Church of England faced new challenges at home, including declining attendance, debates over social issues, and the ordination of women. In 1992, the General Synod of the Church of England voted to ordain women as priests, a landmark decision that marked a significant shift within Anglican tradition. Today, the Anglican Church in England continues to play an important role in British society, though its influence has waned in an increasingly secular culture. The Church has adapted to contemporary issues, engaging in dialogue on topics like LGBTQ+ inclusion, environmental stewardship, and social justice. Its heritage as a middle way between Protestantism and Catholicism remains a defining characteristic, allowing for a broad spectrum of beliefs and practices within a single communion. Despite the challenges of modernity, the Anglican Church has persisted as a vital institution, balancing tradition with change. Its story is one of resilience and transformation, shaped by England's shifting tides of history, politics, and spirituality.